All right, we got Javier here. We've known each other for a good bit now. From JMC. I always want to say CM.
CM, like CMC?
Yeah. Or JMC Productions, which has come a long way since you've changed areas. Now you're in Charlotte. You were in Virginia, but you got clients everywhere. So kind of tell us about the maybe from the beginning, man. What's going on?
Dude, I don't even know, if I'm being honest. Like, it kind of just started. Like, I don't know if we've ever kind of talked, because I kind of just came in. I'd already been in it for about 3 months when you and I met, like, for real. Because we met back in, like, 2019 here, like, for, like, a 5K or something like that. And, like, obviously, like, my sister worked for you and stuff like that. But 3 months prior before us meeting, I got fired from a roofing job where I was at. And I was doing, like, drone work and different things like that, but I fell back into like an employer role because before that I was working at like a warehouse place, like making shirts and like different types of things like that. And I realized I was like, this is not for me. So what I ended up doing was I was just like, well, I'm going to start my own company because I don't want to work for anyone. Like I want to work with people. And then I got the idea and I just kind of went for it. You know, entrepreneurship around that time was kind of like cool.
Yeah.
Like people were like kind of diving into that. And then it just kind of happened.
Do you remember like is there a specific guys or specific did you get into podcasts? Did you get into talking to somebody local? Did you get into what kind of geared you to being like, hey, I actually like doing this. I know a lot of people need this.
Yeah.
Like where we at on that?
It was Hormozy, Alex Hormozy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cause and it started kind of like organically too, which was funny. Cause like I would see a lot of his like videos. And I could give two craps about like what the video was like about. It was more so like the formats. Like I saw the subtitles. I saw like the quick cuts and the zooms. And I was like, I'm starting to see a lot of this like style of video. Like why is it so, you know, popular all of a sudden? Yeah. And then like that's when I was like, okay, well I kind of learned how to make this.
Yeah.
And like I taught myself how to make those types of videos. That's the ones that we did.
Right.
Like where I came down here, we filmed for like 8 hours that day.
Yeah, we did.
It was crazy. I like thinking about it. I was going through some of the footage because I have the little blue like thing over there you see on the computer. Like that's like the hard drive for it, and I have all of that footage. So every now and then, like I'll go back and I'll click it and I'll go, "Wow,
man,
these suck." Like, and like I'm like, "Oh man, like we really did this for 8 hours," and like that was such a surreal day.
Yeah,
because that was the first time I've done it.
Yeah.
And I came down here with a phone.
Yeah.
You know
we were in different rooms. Yeah. We were in here. We were in the other office. I mean, we did a lot.
Yeah. And it's like, that was, it wasn't scary, but it was like, holy crap, like I'm in this. Yeah. And like the drive, remember, like I was in Virginia at this time. So that was 5.5 hours. So like on the drive down, I'm like about to film with a phone. Like, is this really going to like turn out good and all these different things? And it ended up turning into something completely different from like what the original idea was. Right. So it's, I don't know, it's crazy. How's it like kind of just seen from like an outside perspective? I'm curious.
Yeah, it's funny. I mean, you always, I think that's everything, even when we change stuff in our practice, like, we always talk about like, I always talk about the convenience part. We were talking before offline about how important convenience is for everybody. So I went to this guy, Dustin Burrow, and he's actually an orthodontist himself. So I know he's been through it. I know he's dealt with the headaches of staffing and, getting people to show up and that type of thing. So when the first time you hear something like Hormozy might have told you, like, oh yeah, I want to do that. Yeah. Then you got to execute it. And that first time you execute it. So the first time I'm like going to my staff and be like, hey, we're going to be open on Saturdays and we're going to be open until 7:00 in the evening. You get those looks like, is everybody going to quit? Yeah. Is everybody going to do this? So it was a matter of just for us and that, like you coming down here and being like, I got my phone. I don't know how this is going to work out. I don't know if he's going to be adaptable to getting content. Are my patients going to show up on Saturday? Is anyone going to, they might schedule, but are they going to show? Are people going to come in the evening? And then you realize the first time you're like, you just got to do it. Yeah, yeah. And so we've done it, and that's been great for us for the convenient parent. We thought it was going to be parents, but actually it's a lot of adults too. You got to be at work, whatever. And so I think seeing where you've come from, we can kind of relate a lot. You know, we're completely different businesses, but it's like, man, you just got to make a decision and be like, and I know we also talked about convenience for your clients too. You know, like how can we adapt to make it a better, not only patient experience, but more convenient for people to get the value that they need out of it. And also let's get our value.
Yeah, it's like you always talk about like the lowering of resistance, like lowering that barrier of entry. And like I know we were talking about it just like acquisition, but I've taken that sort of like lower that barrier of entry of like across the board of just like resistance. Like can we lower the resistance of what it takes to actually get to point A or point B or whatever it is? Is it true that Lily was a part of that first crew for that Saturday?
It was.
Yeah. She always brings it up sometimes when she was like, yeah, like, you know, like me and Dr. Sam, like we low key kind of started like the Saturdays. And, like, there's a bunch of people there. And I think my cousin was there or something like that or something. I don't know.
You know, it's all kind of a blur. I know that you had those special people like your sister, Lily, who's now back with us at a much bigger role. But then she was kind of good at everything. So, and you know, she was willing to try stuff. So, you know, you get a few people around you like that that don't just immediately, because 80% of the people are going to be like, oh my God, this is never going to work. And that's what it is in the dental community. You know, you start telling your colleagues and some of my co-residents, like, you can't be open on, I mean, let alone Saturdays. Most dentists aren't open on Fridays. You know, so the pushback on that, and then you just got to know, all right, well, what's the worst? I always say, what's the worst case scenario? Let's open something up. Let's see if the patient population.
That's interesting. How do you like? I guess the question is once you get that, like obviously you're the leader in this role, right? Yep. So it's like at what point do you pass that like the barrier of like, yeah, I get it, you guys don't like want to do it, but like we're gonna try it anyways.
Yeah, I'm pretty aggressive on that end. Yeah. But the good thing is it's kind of like relating it back to you. Like there's not too much risk in just trying something. So for us, like if I opened a Saturday or open an evening, I could get, you know, we don't have to do a full blown out clinic. I could be like, all right, we're going to do 2 columns and limit it to this many patients, and we're only going to have 2 assistants. And then if that fills up, then you go, okay, maybe we need to adjust pay scales. Maybe we need to incentivize people to work on a Saturday, which we do, because it's important to our patients. So if it's important to our patients, hey, let's put a little bit more value, our value into what they value. So, you know, just playing with it, you know, we've definitely run into our issues with it. And like, you know, like how many times have you changed your direction?
Oh my God, dude.
And like what you thought the client wanted and how, I'd like to hear this. Like, what have you seen with your clients, their biggest roadmaps when you first get in? I assume everybody's super excited. They're like, yep, I'm going to be the content machine. I'm going to get you all the stuff you need. I'm going to take an hour phone call with you every week, and we're going to chop it up. Like, where have you seen that where you're like, all right, now that's not reality?
After like, it's after we film is when because it's always leading up until the film. So like the first week that we're talking, it's always like, this is what we're going to do for the content. This is the ideas. What's your idea? And it's like you're saying, it's super excited. And then, like, we film, and the film day is all a lot of fun. We get to know each other a little bit more, and then it's just like, hey, I got to take some time and edit. But once the editing happens, that's where that overhaul of, like, production increases. So the time where we're talking about that exciting stuff, like, I actually have to deliver. So that, like, little barrier of just, like, hey, we did this, like, where's the content? But the thing is I think I did not a bad job of setting expectations, but in their brand, they're like, oh, we're going to get 1 million followers and likes. And like reality hits them where it's like, it's not like that. So it's always after that first month where I'm like, okay, so maybe I got to, instead of selling the views and selling this, then maybe I need to come out and like sell this dream scenario of like, you're getting content. So it's pivoted from what we did, which was like 25 pieces of content right off the bat. And like, that was it. But then I realized it's like once you post that 25th piece of content, you're kind of like, I'm out of content. So I was like, well, we need to create a system that makes this content. And that's what, like, today, like, that's what it is. Like, that's what I'm, like, honing in on. Like, it's no longer just I'm a videographer and I make clips for you. It's I create a system for you where, like, you just have content coming in and you're making an asset. So pivoting was fun. And it's hard, too, because you're just like, oh, dang, have I been, like, wasting my time this entire time? And then you're like, no. And then you have like good mentors like yourself who are like, no, like this, you know, this is a part of the journey. Like you can't, if you can stay on thing, like stay focused, but learn how to pivot. So it's been cool.
Yeah.
It's been weird.
Yeah. That reminds me in dental school too. I've, you know, people that mentored to go through dental school, and, you know, you look at all the time you spent in dental school, and you're like, all right, how much of that am I actually using clinic day to day? For me, orthodontics, I'm using probably more than you think, but not nearly as much. So I always tell people, if they're not doing dental and they're doing something like you're doing, like, hey, there's going to be a lot of time that you do something for a long period of time, and man, you might never use that again.
Yeah.
But if you pull something out of it, or just know that, hey, you got to go through some stuff to get some stuff. Yeah. And, you know, that's what we've seen.
Do you think that, like, that's, like, necessary? Like, you have to go not that route, but, like, do things have to get bad in order to get better?
I don't know if they have to get bad. I always thought about that. Like, everyone's like, oh, you have to make mistakes to learn from them. I think now we're in a world where we have a lot of availability to other people's mistakes. So taking risks, but being strategic about it. Yeah. I've certainly made a ton of mine, but I look back on it, and, you know, younger doctors that are saying, hey, I should open my practice. I'm like, well, utilize the people that have already made the mistakes, because maybe you don't have to make that mistake. You know, like, everyone's like, oh, you know, I have this big failure story, but maybe you don't have to, you know, or it doesn't have to be as hurtful.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. That makes sense.
And it's really fun to tell that story after you're successful.
Yeah.
You know, like, every successful person you've ever heard, like, oh, I was broke. I was on the streets.
Like Jelly Roll. You see
that?
that?
You know, like, all right, man, we've heard this story before. Like, I want to hear the guy that was like, nah. Like, I watched all those videos, and I learned from this guy. Like, hey, don't go this direction, go this direction. And, you know, was it hard at first because I had to reinvest back in my business, and all my buddies were buying new trucks, and they were, you know, getting fancier apartments. But was I investing back in my business? Yeah. Was that hard? Maybe. But I was still.
Dude, that's how I feel right now, where it's like, there, like you said, there's so much available. Where, like, obviously, like, I have you, and I have, like, a couple other guys that I talk to, but I also have, like, the internet, Gary V, Hormozy, Jordan Peterson, like, all these, like, titans of just mindset and, like, what they do. And I watch these videos, and it's like, I don't really pay attention so much from, like, write it down. It's just downloading in my subconscious. Yeah. And, you know, it's like low key, like, throughout my day to day, it comes out and I take care of it. And it's crazy to look 2 years, because I'm starting year 3 now. So it's been 2 years since I've been doing entrepreneurship. And it's like, kind of like what you've been saying. It's like, I've been looking at people and, like, learning from their mistakes, because that's what I heard. A good friend of mine who's also mentored Tom Anderson, who owns the roofing company that I was at, he told me, he was like, the best way to fast track your success is to learn from other people's mistakes. Like, straight up. He was like, don't make the mistakes, like, save yourself. And he said exactly what you said. Like, it's going to sound cool in like 10 years, but, like, save yourself the trouble.
So, yeah. And it's easy to say when you've already made it. Yeah. What you don't hear is that story that the guy made a bunch of mistakes, didn't make it, and went bankrupt.
And then give up. Yeah.
But I think, you know, the long story is, even if you go through that and you're making a lot of mistakes, go bankrupt, whatever, it's the person that does reinvent themselves and does it. I think most people, like we were talking with content, I think the podcast is the same way. Like, maybe I started my podcast 2 years ago, nobody's listening to it, but I saw some stat. It's like, you know, you have to do 200 episodes and it has to be consistent for to get, like, any listeners. Yeah. And so that takes almost a lot of people about 5 years. Yeah. And most people are going to quit after 6 months.
After this third episode.
Yeah. I mean, the stats were pretty crazy. How many podcasts are launched and how many just don't post after a certain amount of time. And I think with your stuff too, your content stuff, as being one of the clients, our biggest thing, I mean, we're a little bit different. You know, we have a full marketing team behind us and all this stuff. And it's still hard to get content, and most importantly, consistent content to give value to our patients, because the main reason that we want to do it is, to grow our business, but also to be, hey, this is how things are done. You don't have to be as nervous when you come in. Yeah. You know, because a lot of people are doing their research on TikTok and on Instagram. They're like, how do they even put a bracket on?
Yeah.
And so
What is a bracket?
Yeah, you know, like,
Yeah.
so if they go there and they're like, oh yeah, that's easy. They just stick it on there and do a little light, or
Yeah.
hey, yeah, braces don't take 3 years or 2 years now. They go a lot faster.
Yeah.
Or they don't hurt as much. So they're getting that information, but getting that out, and we know it in our head.
Yeah.
And then once they come in the office, you know, maybe they've already been thinking about this or scared for this for 2 weeks, 3 weeks, however they want, years.
Yeah.
You know, we talked about offline, the biggest thing for adult patients to come in. I'm like, you just passed the biggest barrier coming into the free consult, because, you know, you're having all these things from when you had braces as a kid, or your friend had braces as a kid, and you hear all this stuff and kind of get set in your mindset. So you're like, I'll do that next week.
Yeah.
I need to make that appointment. I know that's tooth is crooked, but you know, let's go.
Dude, it's so crazy that's like it's the same concept across the board, whether it's a podcast, whether it's ortho, whether it's the gym, like it's the same thing. It's like I always know I have to do it.
Yep.
Or I should do it. But I don't.
Yep.
Or like I start it and then I stop. And it's only like once you get past year 3 or year 5, like obviously orthodontic is a little bit different. And just, you know, it's 5 weeks or 3 weeks where like it sucks. Cause like I used to think when I started getting seen by the ortho for, you know, consult or whatever, I thought braces went through my gums.
Yeah.
You know, like I was like, what?
Or am I going to have to get shots? Am I going to have to get numb? Some people are like, do you get put to sleep to put your braces on? I'm like, oh, man, you think this is way more complicated than it is.
I wonder why. I mean, I guess like Hollywood. Did Hollywood mess up braces, you think?
I don't know. I think it's stories. You know, people.
Oh, yeah.
You know,
that's true.
People talk about they're like, funny. Oh, my God, it hurts so bad. But
then their brains just go.
Yeah.
Oh, metal in your mouth, wire. That makes sense.
Like we always hear you know, some people do have to have a surgical procedure with their braces. Right. I don't want to get my jaw wired.
And that's the one person they talk to.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like, God,
you left out so much context.
Yeah, we're not breaking your jaw. We're not wiring it shut. Yeah. You know, like, you know, all that funny stuff. But yeah, I mean, I think what's interesting is that we were just talking about, it's that discipline over motivation.
Yeah.
And I think that's where we're circling around about your clients. Like that first video shoot, everyone's super motivated. Yep. You know, they put their deposit down. Yeah. They got this guy with this fancy cameras and stuff coming in. Boom, we got this. And then give them the content, whether you're posting, they're posting. Once they run out, you know, you're where do you go from there?
Yeah, and it's like, you know, I look at it like if I was like a physical trainer. Yeah. Like if you're trying to get the body that you want for the summer, how would I motivate you or keep you accountable in that sense? And that's been like the biggest thing, because I'm transitioning from that like videographer, photographer mindset of like I'm going to provide you with X amount of like shoots and videos to, okay, well, let's keep it consistent. And that's been the hardest thing, because I've kind of been in this like working in the business mentality, and now I'm like taking myself out and I'm working on it. But since I'm the only one right now, like I have to kind of like balance it both before I start hiring people. Yeah. And once I do that, you know, that's definitely going to be, you know, a huge accomplishment, like being like, oh wow, like, you know, I have employees now. What was like I guess for dentists it's a little bit different, because like in your story is a little bit more, you know, different. Your dad has a practice too, so he already had employees coming in. But like, what was that moment for you where, you know, you went to dental school, graduated dental school, and then you're like, all right, I'm going to be an ortho. What was that moment for you where you kind of realized business-wise that things started to kind of shift?
Yeah, I think probably the opening of the Rock Hill office, our second practice. You know, I came into my dad's practice that was already established. Then, you know, it did take me a couple years, had some mentors, as I mentioned, that orthodontist Dustin Burleson, went to a few of his conferences, made me think about needing to pull the trigger on stuff. So opening that first practice where you have 0 patients, you're not as well known in the area because, you know, your dad had been practicing there for 30 years. So having that first employee and having her be able to do so many different things, and then just going there and being like, all right, this is our very first patient ever in this office. And, oh, this is number 2. And now I look back on it, I'm like, I remember thinking, oh my God, that first new patient exam, like, that's going to be so amazing. And now, you know, you see it snowball so fast. You're like, it's hard to even remember back when, you know, you had maybe just 4 patients on the schedule that day. Right. And that's kind of what we're going through with our newer practices now, you know, just trying to balance that. But, you know, it's funny. You think about it and then you think back on it. And the good thing is you just think about the good stuff. You're like, oh yeah, it's going now.
That's right.
You forget that probably that Tuesday
stuff.
I was down there and maybe one patient was on the schedule and you're like, oh my God, is this thing going to make it? I got to pay for these lights. I got to pay the guy that put these dental chairs in. You know, I got a lot of people to pay. So I hope this works out. But yeah.
No, that's cool. I kind of like the route that we just took right there is now I think we can use that. Like, I think if we can make your brand, like your personal brand, kind of like I've kind of been there, done that, and you become that like digital mentor, I guess is how we can frame it, where people can be like, oh yeah, well, I listen to Sam Burrow, and he kind of like showed me this. Like, I took the conversation, like we started off with like that interview, and I started to feel this like pressure of like, oh, well, if I sit here and I tell my whole story, it's just gonna be me yapping for an hour. You know, I like to talk, so I'll get out there. So I took it back and I was like, all right, well, let's see if we can start a conversation. Yeah. So you see the difference between like interview style, like it's still a conversation with an interview, but this dynamic of like going back and forth and making sure like the guest feels like they can talk and ask questions too. So it's not just an interview. Yeah. That's a podcast. Yeah. We're talking about the now, but we can also like go back and forth too. So I brought us to now, where I was like, oh, we're doing this. And then I like took us back to 2023. And then I brought us back here, and then I took you back all the way to where you were. But instead of like being like just telling the story, the audience essentially is just listening to us having that conversation, but we're telling a story too. So does that make sense?
Yeah, more like a Rogan style than
that's it.
Jimmy Kimmel or late night.
We had a talk show.
Exactly. Like you're like, hey, these sound scripted. This sounds like, hey, I'm giving the generic answer I always give. I feel like you've done a good job of training me through it since we started a couple years ago about not sounding so being authentic.
The salesy.
I think
the doctor voice.
What do you tell your client? Do you do training with your clients too, or coaching, I guess is the better word?
I'm starting to. So I had a client and he was more virtual. So he's in Fredericksburg, Virginia. And he needed help managing his content creation process. So those calls that we would have every week, so we had a Monday, Wednesday, Friday call. And each call was, what are you doing? How are you doing it? What do you need to improve on? And that's like the first time I've framed it as coaching. But I think naturally I like to coach by just talking. Right. And I'm sure you've noticed that about me, where I'll be like, oh yeah, this is cool, but like, what if we try it like this? You know? And then like specifically, like when I'm filming, if I notice someone is like, it's giving me that like classic like salesman voice, or I'm trying to put on the camera, I shut the camera off. I'm like, oh, hey, I'm going to point something out, and this isn't a personal attack. This is what I'm looking for. And that's the more the director role. So it kind of happens like naturally, but I want to take it to that extent of like, no, like now you're learning how to do it. So I went and did a networking, like, I guess like incubator or something, where it was like a formal networking event. You had to stand up and do like a 60-second pitch. So I stood up there and I was like, oh, I'm not going to say I'm a videographer. Like, I'm going to come up, I'm going to shoot from the hip real quick. So I was like, yeah, my name is Javier. I'm a content creator, and I help you get comfortable on camera. Yeah. And it was like 10 seconds, and I had 50 seconds to go. So I was like, oh, I still have 50 seconds. And like broke the ice from that. But I had a real estate agent approach me, and she was like, oh my gosh, like I've been trying to make content for so long, and I suck on camera. Like, can we get together? I was like, absolutely. So I was like, okay. So it's, I think it happens, but I want to get more, like serious about it. Yeah.
I think there's you're good with knowing there's different styles. So, not necessarily pushing them towards one style or another, but just being like trying to figure out what they really are and what their goals are and stuff like that. So I think, you've done a good job with that. So where are we going from here? What's the big vision? What's the goal
for JMC?
Yeah.
Oh man, dude, I want to be the Apple of content creation. Like that's always been like the catalyst. Like I'm a huge Apple stan. Like I love the story of Steve Jobs and all that. But I think looking at what the like culture of what it is, it's just ease of use. Ease of use. That's it. Yep. That's what it boils down to. Like I got the new phone, transferred all my data in like 10 minutes. I'm like, bro, that's insane. Can I do the same thing for JMC? How do I streamline content creation? For your
JMC clients, what's like a a big thing in terms of keeping them engaged? I know you're talking about ease of use. As a client, I can see what comes into our place is everybody's valuable with their time. So you have a doctor come in and he wants to get content and he wants to do it. He's pumped, but then does he want to eat up a Wednesday lunch every week to do it?
Yeah.
Maybe. And then he's been in the clinic all day. Are you going to get much out of that?
That's what I'm still learning.
Yeah.
And that's definitely the dynamic that I'm starting to get, because I'm starting to become more aware of it. Like, because I know I'm impeding. So I've always been like, can we get a content day?
Yeah.
You know, and I think I stopped there because I think in my brain that's enough.
Yeah.
But what I've been learning is, like, I'm speaking a different language. Like, content day to me is what I know in my head. But in content day for you is probably like, I don't know. I don't know what content day is. I feel like you know because we've done one. Yeah. But, like, to my other clients, they're like, what the hell is that?
What am I going to do? Do I need to prepare? Yeah. Do I need to learn something, study something?
So it's still evolving in that sense. But I think what I want this to be is, like, essentially like Uber.
Yeah.
Uber, Grubhub, like that same kind of like model where it's just like you pick up your phone, you're like, oh, well, I need a videographer that specializes in podcast on 6:45 a.m. on this day.
Yeah.
And they order it and he pops up and he's like, hey, like, this is what you ordered, right? Like, I got this, and that.
Oh, that's cool.
And like, there's, you know, you choose the gear, like you can get super sophisticated with it. So I'm starting to launch it now, and it's still in like the early phases, but it's, I have a buddy of mine in Virginia, his name is Chad, and he's helping me launch a directory. And essentially what's going to be, it's like, instead of relying on Instagram and Facebook and all these third-party socials, it's my own website where I can post the content that I make with my client and then help them, like, filter people to their website. So essentially it's that first barrier of communication. So it's the same thing with Instagram, but, like, JMC's hosting it. But that's the start of, we're hosting the content on our page. Yeah. And then eventually it's going to be like, oh, you can contact me through this page. Once you can contact me through it, then you can request this person. And then it goes from there. So it's the first step to doing that. And then, like, the coaching aspect, that's where they get, like, a password for VIP and all that. So I have this idea of, like, a luxurious kind of feel to it where it's like a Gucci, Louis Vuitton thing where it's like only the VIPs get this. And obviously it's higher ticket, but you're getting more value. So that's kind of the vision of just, if it's taking it from the kind of like the run and gun to this is like state of the art. Like, you know, you have to be making X amount of money to afford this. And like, those are the type of clients that I want too. Yeah. And then like the Uber idea of like having people come out, like that's for like more of like the more affordable side of things. So I have this vision of just like being affordable and keeping it well, just like Apple kind of has like the SE versions of the phone, you know, a little bit more lower tier, less technology, but still does the basics. Same kind of vibe. So am I going to be $1 trillion company? That would be pretty cool. I don't know about all that, but that's kind of like what I'm shooting for.
So if you want the Apple of production, video, anything that JMC Productions is the guy for you. That's awesome, man. I like the ambition, and you've always been always has a lot of ideas, and I know you'll pivot to what the client needs, which is always super cool. So if anybody out there is looking for that, contact them up. And I know I've already taken 30 minutes of your morning, busy guy. Yeah, so we'll wrap this thing up. But thanks for coming on, and let people know where they can find you, all that good stuff. We'll put it in the show notes and all that. What's the easiest way?
Instagram right now, Javier Miranda-Castro, and then LinkedIn. For sure is the biggest one.
Yeah, I see you pop on my LinkedIn all the time.
Yeah.
But very cool. Good content. So it's something that I think people would like. So go on there, jump on there, check out some stuff, and appreciate you coming on.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me.
All right.